So good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all had a great lunch. We have with us here today Dr. Minna Andrews, Sacred Heart College, Thevara. He will talk to us about queer literature, theories, and theorists. So over to you, Minna. Guys, is Dr. Minna audible? Guys?
Move to the history of let's start from how the idea of cure, the word. I think we should begin with the word cure itself. Hi, could somebody give me a hi back, please? From the online class, if somebody could say hi or something. Yeah, chewing right now. Good. Hi, kindly respond.
Hello, you're audible. Hi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So let us get on. Now, the idea of studies and the idea of the word theory. When you look at pure studies and when you look at pure study, we have to understand the studies is usually a part of what we call as humanities, social sciences. Your studies belongs to social sciences. It belongs to literature, it belongs to art, it belongs to the wide spectrum of humanities. The minute you say, so it is essentially as I would But the minute we move to the phrase pure theory, we have to understand from it being interdisciplinary, now we are moving to multidisciplinary. Now, you know the multidisciplinary. Interdisciplinary is much more limited than multidisciplinary, wherein the minute you look at gender, the minute you look at sexuality, the minute you look at LGBTQ, and then you look at completely different disciplines like economics or politics or something connected to science, that is when we're getting multidisciplinary. So I think that is how pure I think that achievement for a factor in literature or critical theory is very important because we are looking at a clinical way of dissecting gender, which we are not rather used to. We are usually abstract in nature. Humanities people, we are abstract in nature. We really do not like the concreteness of facts. But see, now we are taking our abstract nature to what is usually clinical. That is, everything that is connected to math or science. We are rendering them our perspective and they need us now. Let's say if you're going to look at economics of how an advertisement that has a woman figure, an advertisement that has a transgender figure, how does it fare and how does it make profit for that particular item? Suddenly, see, we are relevant. Our pure theory is relevant. So, pure studies is essentially a wide, spectrum of knowledge that challenges sexuality and gender. But the minute it becomes pure theory, we have made it an analytical tool, just like the statistical ASPSS or any scientific tool. We have turned pure studies into an analytical tool, which becomes essentially, quintessentially multidisciplinary in nature. So I think that is where this is important. So it is not just a part of literature. It is just not a part of critical or critical theory, as we call it. It is now in practice throughout the world. All the scientific media, all the social sciences media, we are just spreading it out, and nobody can ignore pure studies anymore. You know, Essentially, as anything in social sciences, it would tell you, pure studies comes from a kind of a cultural societal setup. Somebody was viewing the culture, somebody was viewing the society, and they understood, see, this thing has not been discussed enough. There are minorities who are suffering because people haven't discussed this as much as it should have been, and suddenly they bring it to the fore, they bring the minority issue to the fore, and everybody starts discussing it. Now, the base would be feminism. The base would be feminism. And what did feminism say? Feminism said that, let's say, you can't just give all importance to men. We are there. So, feminism essentially destabilized gender. What does gender studies do? Gender studies takes feminism, and gender studies is of the understanding that when you only talk about women, there is so much hostility about it. The word feminism, I think, even when it talks about equality, people are against it because of the word feminist. So now they have changed the terminology, and they say, if you want liberation of minorities, if you want the liberation of underprivileged, let us see how the relationship between the minority and the majority work. That is where feminism is changes its appearance to become gender studies. Now men are in the equation. Now we look at how men understand women, how men understand female structure in society, the idea of male gaze. We are coming to cure studies, which is going to destabilize male gaze, which says that male gaze, females also look back. So feminism essentially is not just about male gaze, and we can't keep talking about male gaze alone. The way, no, now I hope you all know what male gaze is. Male gaze means that everything in Western art and culture are a byproduct of how traditionally men have been looking at women, or how, let's say, they look, see a particular flower, and they can only appreciate the flower when they connect it to a woman, and the beauty is connected to a woman, and everything in art, if you want to appreciate it, it can be appreciated only through the traditional Eurocentric white man. That is male gaze. So only through man gaze can you enjoy anything in Western art and culture. That understanding is what is male gaze. Pure theory takes a step further, which we'll learn later. It says that females also look back. Females also look back. As a society, we all look back. So, the idea of feminism only targeting the weakness of, women in society might not be universal in nature. So, to turn this idea of studies into more universal, people started discussing what we right now call as gender studies. And from gender studies, later we bifurcate into gay studies, lesbian studies, transgender studies, and at last we have this Q, LGBTQ, and the Q stands for queer. And you should understand that it is a post-structuralist theory. It is a post-structuralist theory. Feminism was also a post-structuralist theory, but by the presence of queer theory. What happens? Suddenly, feminism starts to look like structuralism. Because in feminism, the center is woman. Okay. Wherein gender theory or queer studies say that no, no, it can't be woman, it has to be all minority. Post structuralist theory Because as we go on discussing gender, we see that we cannot afford a center. There cannot be one center the minute we discuss gender. So it is an ever advancing post-structuralist theory, and mind you, science or math or any core science discipline which always needs a center now is affected by a completely post-structuralist theory like pure studies. And I think that is where it is academically or contemporarily very, very relevant. Now, coming back to the word cure. Since I was going through the history of the word cure for this class, I understood the word cure essentially meant suspicious. A man's personality. It was first used by Scottish people. It was used in a poetry war between two poets. One was Dunbar, as we all know. Dunbar and another poet, they were in a war of poems about a person. And in that poem, it was mentioned as a person is pure, it means that he's suspicious. Later, we all know Oscar Wilde, right? Oscar Wilde's partner, or the person whom Oscar Wilde wrote a lot of love letters to, Lord Alfred Douglas. This Alfred Douglas had a father called John Douglas. He had an elder son called as Francis Douglas. And Francis Douglas was supposedly in a homosexual relationship with his boss, Lord Rosebery. And Francis dies. And once Francis dies, the father is so sad and irritated that he writes a treatise on how homosexual people are, or homosexuality, or the word that they used then was sodomy. How sodomy is, an unethical practice. It is evil to do. And in that treatise, he used the word cure to refer to this Lord Rosebery. But it is a sad fact that his younger son Alfred Douglas also was a homosexual, and it is in this rage that Oscar Wilde was put to prison by John Douglas. If you all remember, Don Profoundus, a book written by Oscar Wilde, was written when he was in prison. Okay, so he was put in prison for sodomy, and the person who was instrumental in putting Oscar Wilde in prison was John Douglas, who used the word queer again in the 18th century. Okay, and then now we come to 1920s. By 1920s, after this Victorian time, everything is strictly codified. This is how women should behave, this is how men should behave, and from then, pure as a word has always been used in a negative, pejorative sense. It is usually a slur word, a bad word that you call a person. From then, what happens in 1960s and 70s, after the Second World War and all, people understand that there is no point in living in a very strict society. You might as well have your own life's pursuits. And they start socializing, and gay bars and lesbian bars are suddenly emerging. Even if it is in the underground, they are emerging. But by 1970s to 1980s, what we see is when this culture is unleashed, when the sudden, freedom comes in the mind of people, the sexual acts lead to a rise in AIDS. Okay, because nobody is acknowledging the existence of cure people, so therefore they wouldn't do anything to take care of their health, and therefore AIDS suddenly spread. And then again, as always society does, this gets blamed on the gays and the lesbians. They close the bathhouses, they close the movie theaters, they hunt gay people down. I think there is a Hollywood movie called as Milk with Sean Penn, which discusses this issue. Now, when this AIDS pandemic hits, I think only in 1980s, 16,000 people die of AIDS in America. And suddenly, there is this. Yes, yes, sir, please.
As a member of the queer community, as a bisexual, and I was quite a conference. The 1960s pandemic in AIDS was not because homosexuality came out into view. It was because sexuality presets as a whole evolution happened. It was as much, you
General
unprotected
heterosexuality.
heterosexuality unprotected homosexual.
That's where I'm getting to.
There
Yeah.
are multiple biological sex
Right.
that make as AIDS or AIDS.
Among.
It's only about unprotected sex.
So this particular point is where we're getting it. At the same time, when this was being blamed on the homosexual people, that is where Larry Kramer comes into picture. Another movie called as Kramer versus Kramer. You can see that Larry Kramer, as Sir rightly said, he makes it a point to tell everybody that there is no statistics. How can you blame it on the gays? Because it was the technique of the society. It still is the technique of society. They identify one wrongful factor and which they cannot accept, and they convert the whole problem as the base of them. So Larry Kramer, in reaction against this particular discussion of how gays are creating AIDS, and how this pandemic is due to the liberalization of sexuality, he donates close to $4 million to endo a department, okay, for gender studies. It irritates everybody. At the same time, we have another lady called as Anita Bryant, who starts a campaign, a Republican campaign. As you know, the Republicans are very, very, conservative and small-minded. For John Briggs, there was a senator called as John Briggs, for his what do you say, campaign, to help him. There is this media personnel called as Anita Bryant. She starts something called as Save Our Children, and she goes around saying that save our children. And she goes around to say that, see, if you are openly letting these people roam, we have to save our children from this, discussions on gay, gender and all of those things. We, being a conservative society, is what is going to work for humanity. So this campaign is taken up by Republicans also. Same time, Larry Kramer, as sir says, comes into forefront and says that the AIDS is not due to gay sex. It is generally everything, the hippie culture, the Second World War, everything suddenly lets loose a man's need for a free sex, and the discussions of sexuality, which leads to such. And this is essentially the failure of the government to give proper education. And that's
It was also population. It was promoted with investments to bring in the entire population.
Yes. Even now, I think they're trying to do it because their population is going down terribly.
They don't
But
want anyone.
so this is how, from feminism, gender studies. From gender studies, we have gay literature, lesbian literature. Then we have transgender literature. Then we have the queer theory. This is how we are following. Now, when gay and lesbian, as everybody would know, it is about sexual identity, sorry, sexual orientation. Transgender would be more about sexual identity. So you are born with a body which you do not recognize. You would want to, let's say, do it like some other sex in the spectrum of gender. So there is a difference. So gay and lesbian is, nothing is a choice, everything is natural. Wherein gay and lesbians, it is essentially about sexual orientation. Transgender, trans man, trans woman, or transsexual, it is about sexual orientation. The difference between transgender and transsexual is when they do a surgery. When you choose to do a surgery and change into the so-called gender that you want to be, you are titled as, it might change later, we are changing it, so it has become transsexual. It is, it's just like gender is fluid. I think the terms around gender is also
Transgender is another
category.
transsexual is something where they were opted for intervention.
Intervention, exactly.
Orient their biological sex with the psychological and emotional sex of sex.
But what the people do not understand is that that is never possible in 100%. They're still struggling after surgery because they're
Right.
working
Yeah, it was a
against
major
it.
factor.
So what everybody is saying that now they get to choose. Now they've done a surgery. Now what is there to complain? No, they are still after surgery. It is a difficult process for them because that 100% integration is never possible. It is problematic. Only through their difficulties will we also be able to understand how difficult, at least simpler difficulties, is existing as a woman or a man itself. We think this is comfortable, but we identify parts in ourselves which we would like to associate here. So
You
this
see,
is
the surgery is just one
stage.
they need post surgical care, they need they need hormone therapy for 3 4 years, and they need counseling all the time because when there are so many changes happening in the body, it's like postpartum syndrome. Like when there are changes in the body, the body also gets affected. We need somebody to help with this process.
It's never a life-changing procedure. It is just acclimatizing to whatever crumbs that they can assemble to live a much better, peaceful life than it was before. That's all it does. So that makes their experience worthwhile to be told. That makes their experience valuable to be noted, recorded, and discussed on. And that is what essentially what cure studies or LGBTQ studies is doing. It challenges society's view about a binary gender. It challenges society's all notions of sexuality. It says you cannot have one gender. The difference that happened when gay liberationist movement began their journey in 1970s. They said that gay identity is a core identity. The beginning said that it is a core identity. See, they are going back to finding the center again. But as Pure studies developed, they said no, it cannot be a core identity. If you're advocating that gender is fluid, gay identity also has to be fluid. There is in no way it is possible that gender or sexual orientation is a single entity. It will be fluid. If you find yourself a straight, so-called straight man now, it is possible that it could change. It is about now we have come to the idea of the word cure study, gender, and what revolution it is bringing throughout the world now. It is not limited to literature, it is not limited to criticism. Cure studies is an essential part in every discipline. So therefore, they have become multidisciplinary. And if I think gender studies should be, there should be studies conducted. I think if you, since Anand told me that you're all looking for research implications, I think you could actually develop a course itself that can use methods of survey which can be implemented in other disciplines standing far away from literature to see how gender studies is vital in practicing any kind of discipline nowadays. So I think that is a nice research way to talk about. Now coming back to our cure theory, uh, even from an MEP perspective, I think with gender audits happening in every college right now, I think analyzing any gender audit in Kerala it is called as FYEG, 4 year UG graduate undergraduate program. So as a part of it, we are checking. In our college, there was this gender audit which is mandatory for every teacher. There were certain questions that they were supposed to answer, and if you could do such a survey and analyze the results, that itself is a research in gender studies. So that can be done among anybody, school teachers, from it'll be a questionnaire. You will have essentially research can also be about knowledge generation. You do a survey, you get certain analysis using a theory. Just having that knowledge itself would be it was understood that for mentoring. college students, the teachers need to be sensitized towards gender. So gender neutrality has to be, because every time we talk about a love affair of the college, I think every college, the way the love affair of a couple is discussed is, I would say, the most disgusting way possible. So gender audits, adults, they're adults, and we need to sensitize our language, or else nobody is going to come and tell us their problems, and then the mentoring that is envisioned by UGC is just a couple of words that are so uh, it becomes a joke. But this gender audit survey itself, when it was given to teachers, they said the science teachers do not require it to say. This is more for the humanity, so we are not going to answer. They said this is their reaction. So this is the basic knowledge of gender that our society possesses, even when pure studies is going to science and math and media and advertising. The people who should be teaching or sensitized towards it, they're still ignorant about it. So I think, again, the importance that we have to give. Now, I thought we look at pure studies in a technical way through books and theorists. We'll discuss 5 theorists and their books, and through them, we'll understand where pure theory is standing right now. But there is this wonderful observation about by a lady called as Margaret Hunt. Okay, I think I have written down her. She wrote a chapter in a book called as Curing the Renaissance. Okay, the book name is Curing the Renaissance. It has some editor, but she has a chapter in it. She says that Renaissance is a very interesting time, because Renaissance disconnected. Said disconnected. Audible, Anna? Am I audible? Connected. Okay. So, Margaret Hunt, she said that, Renaissance is where when we started destabilizing gender. Somehow, that is when we actually started destabilizing. Look at all the Renaissance paintings. Okay, naked bodies, open men and men pictures, open lesbian pictures. Somehow, Renaissance started destabilizing gender and morality. So we have to start looking at Renaissance as the true beginning of pure studies. But we cannot completely take Renaissance because they lack psychological and medical models. Now, pure studies, it has its evidence from psychology. It has evidence in medical field, wherein if you remove those two scientific fields, it began with Renaissance. Somehow, Renaissance is what started make us look differently. Even when they discuss sodomy and all of it, the pictures, the sculptures said something else. The revolution began with the sculptures and the pictures. So that is an important thing. So mainstreaming of theory started with Renaissance. That is an important thing that we have to look at. Now, the next person who is of utmost importance is our own Michel Foucault and his book, The History of Sexuality. This man is very irritating. When you start reading Michel Foucault, it is like, how dare he say this is the minute he starts talking about power and sexuality, the way he bears the truth to us, it's very irritating, because we are all exercising. Even as a, woman, the so-called underprivileged woman in a patriarchal society, I myself am I, exercising power to the more underprivileged, that is my son. So, so this structure, what Foucault said, is a chain, and everybody will be disturbed by what he talks about power, and he brings sexuality into the power relation. And the idea that the basic idea that he says is, you have desire and you repress the desire naturally. Whatever desire that we have, our society, our religion tells us, oh, you can't have it, repress it. The minute you repress it, we begin politics. That is the root of politics. The minute politics begins, what we do is we start looking at the other person as our enemy. So the minute you have desire, the minute you repress, you begin politics, and the politics is what is causing disturbing relationship between the majority, minority, man, woman, child, mother, woman, man, everything is based on it, and there is no real escape. But theoretically, you can escape it by doing what you can look at sexuality not as an innate commodity. Sexuality, if it is not innate, and somebody told you, oh, this is how I should dress as a woman. If I'm wearing jeans, let me wear skin tight jeans. Men are not supposed to wear skin tight jeans. So it is kind of given to me, just like what Simone de Beauvoir said, a man, a woman is decided the minute a child is born. The way a girl child is held and the way a boy child is held, it itself starts training the boy and the girl to be different. Same thing is said in a more clinical, technical, boring terms by Michel Foucault, who says that gender is not innate and that sexuality is a social construct. Our society is so strong. It is so powerful. It will construct an identity for you. For you to escape it is an act of rebellion, he says. And then he goes on to call it, the social construct. So the word socially, gender is socially constructed. Foucault uses a phrase called as it is discursive processing. The minute you say the word, yeah, he could have stopped at social construct. No, Foucault will not do that. Foucault will call social construct, he says, gender is discursive processing. Now, Zantia, his language is so strong, it is so piercing. Because the minute you hear discursive processing, you wanna research it. The minute you will never be satisfied by just, it's like, socially construct, we try to make meaning out of it, and our mind is a little happy with the meaning, our mind, the cognitive mechanism that has happened, or socially construct, but we never go into the depths of the word social construct. But what Foucault does is he'll give you a term which, if you're slightly interested, you want to further go dig deep. So what is discursive? It is connected to discourse. Anything that makes its appearance in a discourse is discursive, as simple as that. But the way he says it, so he says gender is discursive processing. He says that there is this society. In society, man is so and so, woman is so and so. So that is discursive processing. Same as socially constructed. And he says this discursive processing, we have to take the idea of gender from discursive processing. Take gender out of discourse. Let's say Kochi society, how men and women behave in the society of Kochi is a discourse. What they wear, how they eat, how they socialize, everything comes in this particular matrix. If I take the word man from a Kochi society discourse and I put it in Thailand, the idea of man is much more fluid because they have these, very transgender, very LGBTQ, friendly community. The idea of a man is completely different from how it is in India. See, so the man that you and I know is part of the Kochi society discourse, and that is discursive process. So he says for you to understand gender, everything has to be taken from that particular discourse and dismantled outside. Only then will you be able to process it. This is the core idea of a lot of LGBTQ theorists like Teresa de Laurentis, Judith Butler. Let's say there is another very famous person, or one of my favorite among queer theories, Eve Kopovsky Sedgwick. She is what I think, there is a work by her called as the epistemology of the closets, which is wonderful. So this idea of Foucault is the base for all queer studies. It is from the history of sexuality in the year 1976, where he says that gender is a format of discursive processing. And then he adds one more thing into it. What makes Foucault a major part of literature? He says this is done through language. This discursive processing is done through language. That is how he is so important to us. Or else we could have easily thrown him out to some other discipline, but this guy said the word, everything is done through language. So the minute you say language, you'll have to think about Lacan also. You'll have to think from Lacan. Significance, I know. Uh-huh. Lacan and Foucault, I think, are the biggest, psychologists, psychiatrists, or whatever. They affect our cognitive process. We cannot think straight after, dealing with them, or Derrida, deconstruction for that matter. So this is how it is important. And he connects sexuality with power. That's where it becomes more important. So sexuality is a part of discursive processing, and it is usually dissipated, or it is what is the word? Um, Disseminated through language. It is disseminated through language, and sexuality is connected to power. And he talks about two bio powers. One is body self-disciplining. He says there are two bio powers which is deciding everything in the society. One is how you discipline your body. How you review your body. So that is one. Second is the bio power of population control. Okay, these two things are essentially connected to sexuality. So sexuality again is very important, and that is what Foucault might talk about it in a very dry way, technical way, but he suddenly puts sexuality in the power of the most important thing that happens in the postmodern society, that is power. So suddenly sexuality, and since power is important, every country is trying to be powerful, right? The image of Narendra Modi as the very masculine man, the 50s. We can actually do a study on, go back to Foucault, Foucauldian what do you say, analysis of the masculine figure of Narendra Modi, and how he's not married, he is not he does not have any children, can be connected to bio power. It is actually what we call as the usurping of bio power. Okay, he does not engender any offspring, but every Indian child. That's how he prays. So this is essential biopower in reality, as said by Michel Foucault. Now, he says that if power is there are parallels. Everybody, like every what do you say, dictator, every dictatorial, they are the father of the nation. I think we could go back to Gandhi also.
Yeah, they have
Okay.
this thing. If I conquer my body, that gives me an entitlement to control other people's bodies. Even Gandhi had that
I had that idea. The purest, the puritan way of
but
looking at your
then
body.
for him, when he came out of he brings up the fact that he was having sex when his father passed away, and he never was able to forgive himself for that.
So
So
that
he
act itself is
somehow
shameful.
compensated for that. For I mean, what happened to him, very
But
much. But then he didn't understand it fully, and he was not trying to himself, and he overcompensated for it by imposing that rigid thing on his body, and that gave him a sense of entitlement to deny sex to his body, unilaterally declare like one-sided thing, which is a very unethical thing to do in a
then to
marriage,
do.
and then impose this kind of nonsense on the entire nation, and then those experiments which he done in his thesis and all
The
that
idea
stuff.
of celibacy,
Yeah, this thing is like
sleeping with them.
putting his family's ego alongside his wife's ego. It's not good. Yeah, in friendship, ego is more powerful actually. but it's kind of old answer cuisine institutes thing. We have used during the coaching. In French, that word is much more wider than what it is. Yeah, it is tough. Yeah, yeah. Improvisation is something, right? Something else is somebody else's style.
Just ask them this. They can also join us in the
You are or
Yes, you are audible.
one of them tried to get that call.
Somebody has texted there's a break in audio. Just confirm if they are able to listen. Try speaking something.
The audio,
Surabhi Joshi is
the
saying something.
audio is coming clear.
Take a minute, no, somebody is talking.
So, testing about this. Am I audible?
It's dark and very
Yes. So Judith Butler uses
They
Derrida.
realize they decide for the desire.
I know the desire of Foucault and the deconstruction of the Derrida, it will eventually make us all madmen. Coming back to Judith Butler. So masculine is about you being a male. Can I take up one thing? Okay, right. Masculinity, essentially, the conventional definition says you are a male.
I told you.
So, for you to be a man, you have this body part which qualifies you to be a man. You have this mindset that agrees with the society's notion of being a man. That is masculinity. But Judith Butler says, no, it's not as easy as that. You don't simplify masculinity like that. Masculinity is a cluster of fear, she says, for not being effeminate. For you to be masculine, you have to keep on repelling the feminine. You have to keep on repelling effeminacy. But feminine aspects are therefore present. That is why you are repelling it. So masculinity as 100% masculinity does not exist because to be masculine, what are you doing? You're repelling the feminine aspects. So you cannot therefore say that there is no femininity in masculinity. Femininity also exists. So therefore there is no binary. And therefore, this cluster of fear, no, usually transpires or happens to produce what we see as misogyny. The most misogynist men, therefore, according to Judith Butler, are men who are trying very hard to repel their feminine side. From that frustration of not being able to completely repel the feminine part, which they do not understand is the most natural part of being a human being, that you will have feminine and masculine, they are unable to understand it. So they try with all their force to repel the feminine part of it, which causes frustration, which transforms into misogyny, bad words, rape culture, using power to, suppress a woman, etc. So the cluster of fears in masculinity shows that there is no binary. If you are a man, you will have, woman, aspects of a woman or femininity present in you. It is never a binary. So I think that is a wonderful thing, and therefore heterosexuality is not desirable. Heterosexuality is not desirable. So we have discussed Foucault, we have discussed the importance of Derrida and feminism. Now I would like to go to the people who are very, very important, the five important theorists in pure studies. Okay. Now, pure theory, the word was first used by one of the women, or one of the theorists that I told you earlier, Teresa de Laurentis. Teresa, small d, small e, Lauretis, Lauretis, Teresa de Lauretis, Lauretis. I think the S is not pronounced or pronounced, I don't know. Teresa de Lauretis. She is Italian, so we never know. I pronounce it, so it might be Teresa de Lauretis. Uh, So we were discussing the word cure in the beginning, how, now it is a word of resilience. By 1990s, it is through Teresa de Lauretis that people accept the word cure in a positive sense, because she wrote an article. If you want to note down, you can write down Cure Theory, Lesbian and Gay Sexualities. It is an article, Cure Theory, Lesbian and Gay Sexualities, in 1991, in the journal called as Differences. In the journal called as Differences. Pure Theory, Lesbian and Gay Sexualities.
She hosted
Important. She is important because she is the first person to host the Pure Theory conference, 1992. Sexuality. Okay. Now, after this theory, the word gets a lot of endearment. This becomes a term of resilience among the community of pride, and later it gets a connotation that we as pure people, we do not want our gender to be decipherable. Be happy with the uncertainty. Celebrate the uncertainty. So that is how pure. And then again, there was an organization in US in 1990s which is called as the Cure Nation. Again, the word gets prominence, and then there was a gay newspaper called as The Advocates, which called the year 1992 the year of the cure. So suddenly this word is everywhere now, and this takes on the positive sense that it never could. The pejorative sense, the negative sense is wiped out. So there are the two things about it. Now the
It
next.
was like more that I realized that it's celebrated as
Oh, celebratory year, I think.
markets.
Oh, so nice. 1992. The year of the cure, the newspaper, The Advocate, celebrates it. Two. So the year of the cure, and suddenly this word is, what do you say, purged of all the negative connotation that it has. Now, the first person that I want to discuss is among the theorists. It is our own Judith Butler. Judith Butler, as you know, feminist icon. Again, she goes on to dismantle feminism itself. Wonderful, smart lady. I think there are, you have liberal feminism and then you have radical feminism. There are two very different branches of radical feminism. Liberal feminists still talk about equality, marginalized women. I think there is, it is more conscious raising, study, awareness raising. The minute it gets to radical feminism, it is activism oriented. Burn the bra, kill the men. Whereas radical feminism, there are two branches. One radical feminism branch says that this LGBTQ is highly troublesome, everybody is taking attention away from the woman, get back to the issues of women. That is one branch of radical feminism. Judith Butler says, no, radical feminism is opposed to, as any discipline, any branch of knowledge should do, it should keep on deconstructing itself. So Judith Butler kind of radical feminism says that let us deconstruct feminism for development. But, I think Helen Sisu, the laugh of the Medusa, that is more, enraged writing. It shows how women have always been seen as this, even when it was for their survival, whatever women did is seen as, destructive to the society. The minute woman has a voice, it's destructive. Medusa was actually cursed by Achilles to be, the woman with all her hair was turned to, and then if you look at the Medusa, then that man will be turned to stone. Everything was created by man. So that is one kind of radical aspect, wherein Judith Butler wonderfully says that, done. Feminism did, discuss gender, it destabilized gender. Now let us destabilize feminism itself. Let's talk about more important things, she said. That is how she is important. And here we are going to look at her important book, The Gender Trouble. The name of the book is Gender Trouble by Judith Butler. And Gender Trouble. It's a very vast book. I think we'll discuss some five important points of it. Okay, the important thing here, the word in Gender Trouble is gender is performative. Gender is performative. And she goes on to say, don't confuse it with the performance and competence in structuralism. It's just not one performance. The word performative is different from the word performation because performative is a repeated process that makes the subject the subject. That's how she says it. She says it is a repeated process that makes the subject the subject. It emphasizes, puts the flag on it and says this is how it is. So repeated. So, and gender is performing. So the first point would be gender is not what you have. You don't have gender, you perform gender. So when I wake up at morning, the dress that I put on, right, the way I behave, I get onto kitchen. My husband never has to get up and get onto kitchen. So I'm performing my gender. The way I teach class, it is very different from how a man would, so-called man would take the class. Because a man has certain this thing a woman is supposed to do. I am supposed to look more doubtful and certain. The other person is supposed to look more. So when we succumb to this given ideas, we are performing gender and we are making it stronger by performing.
when you give the performance, you make it look natural
Natural.
and you erase the visibility of the fact that it is a performative
Performance.
task.
Exactly.
That
Of
is
making the subject the subject.
yeah, yeah.
So that is the first point. We are all somehow, even when I'm wearing a so-called unconventional dress for a woman, I am performing my gender somewhere. And it is inescapable. But she's not saying don't do that. She's saying understand. Understand that you're performing gender in every single action that you are, performing. Now, the next point is what Foucault said. Gender is not a stable concept. Gender is not a stable concept. You can never understand it as a stable thing. You are born a man, you will be a man. We are in every moment we are in, seconds of fluidity. We are in seconds of oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you, sir. I'll take two and pass.
For those who have not come outside, these are certain things that happens here.
Now, gender is not identity. Identity or gender is not a stable concept. Now, when we say identity is not a stable concept, we are going against identity politics. Yes or no? The minute I say I am a Syrian Christian, the minute I say I am married to a Irava Hindu, the minute I say, my mother is a Muslim, the minute I say, I'm referring to identity. I'm referring to identity. But what is Judith Butler saying? Even that identity is not stable. So all these religious organizations, all these identity organizations, it is problematic. And such organizations are causing problems to the minorities who are affected by the binary of gender as well. Because for you to be a part of a society, let's say if I belong to SNDP, if I belong to NSS, somehow I'm saying I'm okay with identity politics. And within that ambit, when you say, see, I'm not a normal woman, I have male aspect, I think I identify myself as somebody else, then it gets problematic. So she says new identity is stable, especially gender. It is different. It keeps on changing. The next thing is that the sex and gender, that you are assigned a sex at birth, then what you feel is a gender. She says that discussion itself is a problem. Don't discuss. So in a way, she is going against Simone de Beauvoir and saying, she says don't discuss it. It might be a dichotomy, but don't base your studies on that. Don't keep saying this is my sex, this is my gender. Stop using the terminology. Let your discussions go beyond it. This is a false base that we have found. The last one is where she repeats Foucault. She says that gender is created and it is perpetuated through language. Okay, it is perpetuated through language. And she says that language is not an objective tool as we think. The minute I refer to Anand as he, what am I doing? I'm stabilizing gender way of looking at it. It is such a harmless looking word, like pronoun he, she. Right? I think that is why nowadays everybody says I identify myself as he, she, he, him, she, her, they, them. So the idea of language again being a part. This is the general idea of Judith Butler and her gender trouble. And she says that this heteronormative understanding has to be completely removed. When you look at heterosexuality as a normal, that is wrong. Okay, but by going to a wedding, let's say by going to a heterosexual wedding and sitting there, uh, some way At least by 5%, we are saying, oh, this is normal. I'm not shocked by the straight wedding. But if you're going to or a transgender identity wedding or a same-sex marriage, you are trying to show that, see, I am a liberal. I can accept this. So such kind of heterosexual, what do you say, self-righteousness that you have, it has to be removed, is what she says to gender trouble. So I think Judith Butler and Michelle Foucault, the connection has to be important. Again, Judith Butler and Derrida's deconstruction of masculinity. Now, the next person I would like to go to is Sedgwick, Eve Kokovsky. Sedgwick. She, in 19, I was EDE, EDE, KOFOSKY, Sedgwick, SEDGWICC. Now, her book that I would like to discuss is Epistemology of the Closets. There was this one article I was trying to read more about her today, and in 1998 there was an article in the New Yorker about how pure theory is the vogue now. 1998 interview of Miss Edwick. Okay, which talks about how pure study is the in thing now. How every major education institution has a department, and it is a very interesting article where it also talked about some of the names of her articles. See, she wrote an article called as Jane Austen and the Masturbating Girl. And the Masturbating Girl. Jane Austen and the Masturbating Girl. Then she wrote another article on Henry James's The Beast of the Jungle. He has a short story called as The Beast of the Jungle. She renames and does an analysis called as The Beast of the Closets. Okay, supposedly there is this character, this Marcher, a guy called as Marcher, who throughout his lifetime is unable to return the love of a lady called as May Bartram. We do not know why can't he reciprocate. The story doesn't talk about, but the story shows how this girl dies and he goes to the cemetery, cries over. I think all those who are online, I think. So this girl dies, May Bartram dies, and Mr. Marcher goes, and he is unable to, control his. The coordinator has forgotten his own topic. Now, this girl dies. I think I'm repeating over. This girl dies, and this guy goes there and weeps. But he is unable to decipher why couldn't he reciprocate the love. That story is called as The Beast of the Jungle. The story shows that he is a very, what do you say, cruel, violent, not a tender character, and that might be the reason why he couldn't return the love of Maybutter. Miss Sedgwick says that no, she says that he was a closeted gay. He didn't know. He didn't know that because society did not give him enough exposure to tell him that, see, you could be dissolved. He never knew that this might be the reason. So she makes the story and does an analysis called as the beast of the closets. So the word closet is an important phrase that, I think Miss Sedgwick has given us. And the idea of coming out of the closet, the epitome of the closet. So we are going to look at some important parts of, the book Epistemology of the Closet. Her first point is sexuality is unclassifiable. Don't classify it. Don't even think about it. Why? Not because it is, you know, not needed. She says sexuality is so rich and complex. It is beyond humans to classify it. Don't try it. Not because it is bad, not because it is negative, evil, not because the religion says it. No, it is because sexuality is such a rich and a complex concept. Do not try to classify it. It is sexuality is unclassifiable. Then again, she goes on to repeat Derrida. She says that binary is not truth. Binary is not truth, and it is always rooted in society and societal and cultural roots. Every binary, again, we go back to Foucault. Every binary is created by discursive processes. Now, closet, the word closet itself tells us the idea of shape, secrecy and shape. She says how this person who finds himself different is honored and through religion and through societal narrations and discourses, through popular culture, somehow this person who wants to feel different, that person is honored and everybody keeps telling him, see, you're doing something wrong. And a sense of secrecy, therefore a sense of shame is developed to keep that person in the closet so that the society would function without disturbing others. So the so-called, heterosexual people. So that is what she looks at. And this is where she brings in a phrase, I think, which is common now, the homosocial desire. Homosocial desire. Now, homosexuality, we know. Now, what is homosocial? It is like the bromance that we all have heard from movies. And Miss Edrick uses it in the context of the male. She says there is always a need for deep male bonds. But that's what she's calling homosocial desires. She says everywhere we see men's friendships are, discussed. How deep is the bond between the man and the man? How friendships between men are much more deeper than what happens between women, etc., etc. Men are afraid of it also. They know that they have deep bonds with other men, which is not sexual in any way, but they are worried about being discussed also. So this, she brings in another term with homosocial desire. She says there is a homosocial desire among men which is very, very strong. At the same time, they have what they call as homosexual panic. Panic. She posits these two phrases, juxtaposes them to give an idea about how fragile the so-called patriarchal masculinity is and how that particular fragility exercises as a repressive game in closeting the homosexual. This, as we discussed earlier, right? The man who wants to be more and more masculine, he will keep on repressing his femininity, and that will come out as misogyny. Same way, this so-called male would like to have deep, meaningful male bonds which are not sexual. But he will be worried about how the others will perceive it, and there will happen a homosexual panic inside him, which will make him homophobic in nature. So the homophobia is essentially homophobic so-called conventional male. What is he doing? He knows that deep bonds are possible, but he is worried that the society might judge him otherwise. So to prove that he is not a homosexual, he keeps on reaping or raking all these bad words and become a homophobe in nature. So that is another important. So what is homosexual desire? It is deep same-sex relationship or male bond, which, and the important thing is that she says it is within inside a spectrum. It could range from friendship to rivalry. Even if you're a rival, a man and a man trying to be rival actually is a bonding happening. It is a spectrum, and this homosocial desire is within inside a spectrum of friendship to rivalry.
Just adding on to what when we are presenting the bonding happening,
Mm-hmm.
so that is the this conversation is quite exciting to be very soon. The director says that he had actually also shot vlog videos.
Oh, oh.
Like daily shooting.
So that that is the need, and it took women like Cedric to talk about it. It's wonderful in nature because it has been always the patriarchal male who has rejected feminism, rejected gender studies, rejected cure studies. But Cedric is going right back into the middle of center of eye of the storm and saying this is where it all starts. The patriarchal male is the one who begins every problem. And what homosexual panic is, fear of attention to men gliding over to homosexual desire. The minute I'm interested in another man, as a man, if I'm interested in another man, I'm interested in him genuinely. But my mind will say that maybe if I'm homosexual, what if he is this homosexuality? So that panic is called as homosexual panic. And then came a set of people, or I think an organization called a sex panic. Sex panic. It was running when Fedor was alive. It is an organization, a collection of people, homosexual people who says that there is a lot of panic connected to sex, and that leads to a lot of homophobia. So they discuss those problems. So that is Eve said this for you. Eve said this. Somebody I think you should read in depth than Judith Butler. For me, her discussions are less technical in nature, and I think she talks about something called as another book called as Between Men.
Yes.
Between Men. I've not read that book. It says that how Shakespeare, Marlowe, Tennyson, the princess, the princess, they are between men. They are all homoerotic in nature. They are homoerotic in nature. So what she does in that book is, I think that's something we all should read or try to get a copy. It says that how every conventional canonical author that we have, if you actually decipher it through pure theory, their relationship, the way they have expressed it, is homoerotic in nature. Whenever they talk about two friends who are men, two women who are friends, right? There is some kind of a homoeroticness that they are applying in their writing. So between men is another book that will be very, very interesting. The next person again we are going back to Teresa de Lawrence. Lawrence, Teresa de Lawrence. Okay. Then we are going back to her article, Pure Theory, Lesbian and Gay Sexualities. We are going to look at certain seminal points in that particular article. All of these points are repetitive in nature. What Ms. Cedric said has been a repetition of Foucault. I think Judith Butler and Cedric, they were very collaborative in nature. They call this word, no pure word. They go on to call it as, they together say that, the word pure should indicate indeterminacy and indecipherability. It should indicate indeterminacy and indecipherability. The word indeterminacy and indecipherability. The minute somebody asks you what is cure theory, what is cure, the first sentence that we will say, the word itself defines a definition.
Anything which is outside of the binary.
Binary is, so you can't define it. So, and they both go on to say that cure should be a rubric. It should be a structure rather than a term.
That's why it's considered as technical words
Right.
because we use colors of the
Right.
meaning. So we are in the technical spectrum of different what are the technical spectrum. The only thing that's left out is any kind of final logic is unanswered. Everything else comes within the analytical class.
The bright flag, right?
Even people who identify, who might have certain points in their life, or even for the better part of their life, they might have identified as heterosexual. But then at a certain point, like suppose there is a woman, she was married for a long time, she might have identified as heterosexual. But then her marriage breaks up. And then she starts living with another woman, and she finds that kind of life much more satisfying. And she may not technically come out as lesbian or anything like that. But then even she would be acceptable within the queer spectrum. If she doesn't, I mean, unless she doesn't want to be included, everybody ultimately, it's up to people to choose what they want to call themselves.
Miss Sedgwick actually said something about it. She is a, what do we call it?
Or an unwed mother who lives with a child from a casual relationship. Like she might have had casual sex, did not, but then didn't want to get into this entire heteronormative structure and wants to live alone and have deep, abiding friendships with other kids. She would also be accepted within the queer spectrum. The queer spectrum is very accommodating.
Miss Edwick talks about who you want to marry and who you want to be in domesticity with are two different things. She differentiates, we always connect marriage with domesticity. She says these two are very different. Yours is exactly. They are the domesticity, I think the influx of jobs in Gulf, how it left a lot of women living alone here, forming very strong bonds with a lot of other women, and how they ran their homes with the help of other women. I think that's another discussion of domesticity. Say, say,
And in psychological communities too, like the entire, like the parent of the child, I mean, technically it's the father and the mother. But then the fathers are not available for parenting very often. And the mother is, I think, the biological mother is assisted by many affiliated mothers who other women who look after the child, depending on who is working at what point in time, who's sleep, and they are all considered mothers. They are affiliated mothers.
and I think working with affiliated mothers work well than working with a husband. Much more, I think, understandable. Uh, That to take. I think this is where we have to talk. I think we should finish the discussion with intersectionalism. We should get there. Last topic should be that. Now, the next person, did we just finish? Teresa, no, right? Teresa says, again, she repeats, it's like everything is similar. Heterosexuality is not a touchstone. Okay, let's say a heterosexual marriage works this way. Don't say that a homosexual marriage should work this way. Okay, one person should assume the position of a man, the other person should assume the position of a woman. Don't look for it. Don't make heterosexuality the basis or touchstone for any other relationship. Point number one. He goes on to say, second point is gay studies is different from lesbian studies. Do not consider them as a single entity. That's a problem that usually is faced because the gay experiences are completely different from the lesbian experience. Now, wherein lesbian, experience are made erotic by popular culture, wherein gay, sexual desires are seldom done. It is seen as repelling. So she says they both meet completely different ambits, so don't mix them. And she goes on to say how there is a factor for the sexual bias, and one of the factors is race. Your race is a major factor. It is it is a important factor in your sexual bias. Which race do you belong to? Your ethnicity somehow makes a decision for your sexual bias. She talks about the Mongoloid culture there. He says how in Mongoloid cultures there is no real differentiation. It is a natural, just like how, I went to Thailand very recently. So I try to keep away from all the touristy experiences. But the family who were helping us in Thailand, they said, you have to go see the Alcazar show, which is a transgender show. It is not a drag show, but it is a performance by trans women. I said, I don't want to. I said, no, I'm not interested. But they said, you have to see it. But the show was so transformative and overwhelming in nature. Usually, when you have a transgender show or trans woman show in Kochi, there is a lot of sympathy garnered. See, we are helping them. See, we are giving them. It is like a charity, and it is everybody support. Whereas in this Alcazar show, these trans women are derailing people who have come there trying to think that it is a charity that we see these people out to GVCAM India. Like these women take on the center stage and the whole audience now feel obligated to them for giving such a performance. They walk in, they are unabashed, they don't think less of them even by an ounce. And it is very palpable to the audience. The audience walk out, they come in with this charity feeling, oh, we should do this is the way that they have no other work to do. This is how we. And these women come in with their costumes and multicultural experience. For 1 hour, they enthrall you, overwhelm you, and suddenly, and I think that is because it is happening in Thailand, where the first taxi driver that we had was a trans man. So my mother had a difficulty identifying him or her. She kept on saying Ayala, Ayala, Ayala. Because she understood him as, but I understood her as a woman. Because, I could see certain feminine traits in her, chin and all. And my mom didn't understand of her as a woman at all. Ayala, Ayala is what then. When only we are the illiterate people there. It has not affected her or how she is perceived by any other person or not. Only the Indian audience is, confused. How should I? So I think that is why the Alcazar is so powerful there. It is because it is not seen as a charity. They take it as their right. This is what we do, just like other dancers perform something. We're also performing. So in that way, I think the race that you belong to, Therapeutic says, it actually has, it is a factor, it is a variable in your sexual bias. So that is.
I mean, I was planning to bring this in with problems in the introduction with broadly explain like Sedgwick talks about homosocial desire and sexual panic. Even that, in non-masculine cultures, it is far, far less because there is much more accommodation of homosexual desire. Like even if I'm a married man and I'm happy marriage and stuff like that, if there is a space crunch in my house, and let us suppose that like I'm narrating an experience. Okay, I'm a divorced. Like I had a cousin, very very near cousin. His wife and his daughter, and at night there are two bedrooms and sleeping arrangements have to be made. And you know, uh, the like normally in this case it was a cousin choice, but it could have been a male choice. Uh, uh, in our country, in our culture, it's very natural that we make friends and I would share a venue. For that night, he would not be sharing a venue with his wife. And the wife and the daughter would share the other venue. You know, and so because we don't have any this thing that you know, though we are also a very heteronormative society, we don't have this anxiety around homes and shared spaces because men are a lot with men and are a lot with women in Indian society. And even after marriage, when you already have your partner, friend, or same sex is not, looked upon as a social activity at that time. Nobody even notices it.
Notices. Same experience. I had taken a group of boys and girls to a residential camp in Palakkad. And there was a swimming pool, and everybody did whatever we asked them, and we promised them that we would get permission from the authorities and get you into pool midnight. So suddenly, another other teacher who was with me, he said, "No, girls and boys separate." And time was allotted from 11 to 12 girls, 12 to 1 boys. So I'm supposed to chaperone the girls, and the other is supposed to chaperone the boys. And then one girl who told me that she's bi. And she felt so uncomfortable because the girls, other girls themselves do not realize it. And this girl says, later I might be blamed for this. Because she actually had some desire towards one or two of her class friends, and she didn't partake in the pool activity at all. And I'm thinking, here we are trying to differentiate boys time, girls time. As you said, sir, we are unaware of what could happen, or what could be the mentality of a suffering that is going through the mind of a homosexual person or a bisexual person
Yeah,
at
if
that time.
somebody is bi, it's it is something people don't know that you are bi.
But
I mean, unless you come out, they don't know. And sometimes even if you come out, somehow heteronormativity is so strong that it doesn't seep into them. Like I have so many male friends. They know that I'm bi, but they would hesitate before sleeping with a girl unless they are dating her or there is some mutual interest happening out there. They would hesitate before sharing a bed with a girl. But they would do it with me, like they know that I am bi, and technically there is a possibility that I might have a desire. But they wouldn't think twice.
I think there is a research paper right there, portrayal of. Mhm. Decision. Exactly.
So that would be really feel bad also that we share it with our own gender because they totally feel like it should change that
Exactly.
also.
But for some of them, it's traumatic. For my student, to stand in front of women who are in their swimwear, and but she has not openly declared, she had only told me, she's not openly declared that she's bi. For her to stand there, not telling the truth, it was very traumatic for her. She had to leave. So it didn't hit me in the beginning. She has told me, but it didn't hit me. I said, she's a Tamilian. She said, now bore. I said, why? Stay, it's just fun. We're all here. She said, no. I kept on asking, stay, please, I'm not going to blame you. I know. She said, no, it's unbearable, is what she said. It is unbearable. That is when she said, I wish I could tell them all the truth and then play with them, then have a good time with them, but not being able to tell it. And as you know, a typical society of a Christian management college, they're not going to get that. They're not going to get that. So I think what happened to her was it was trauma. So I think two, again, spectrum. Yes,
I think the place gave that like both people are there
aware.
willingly helping each other to solve it, but yeah, other people feel stressed.
Stressful. That's how. Now I think we have just two more people to discuss.
Yeah, sure.
Can you talk about particular races most of about the bias in race?
What I have read is the Mongoloid race. She says every race has its own bias. Every race has its own bias, and race is essentially a variable. In India, our race, the Dravidian race would have certain sexual biases, the Aryan race would have some other sexual bias. Even the Mongoloid tribe would have some other sexual bias, not the transgender bias they wouldn't have. So every race has some kind of a bias because
Even
it's a.
Mongol is famous for this culture. In Meghalaya, among the Garos, I've lived in the Dravidian tribe.
Oh,
I've lived with Muslims, and they are very heteronormative. They're very like bi. Like they have no room in their minds for
transgender.
it's only in our generation that we feel that.
Definitely, but in laws, there are certain sectors
Yeah, in
in
Manipuri
Manipuri
society, there is a
society,
lot
there
of
is a lot of
acceptance for
acceptance for
both gender
both
queer
gender
and
queer and
transsexual.
sexual. Which might also be acceptable at one point. In certain
In
cases,
some of the
I
some
think
of the
churches,
the Christianity would have destroyed it.
there's a lot of northeastern family.
no, Garos
No,
are
Garos
happily
are
living.
but again, they're manipulated as in the beginning, mothers stop being made. But the idea of a woman being the patriarch
Would be
is sort of messed up because
You see,
you
among
see,
the
among the
Manipuris are
Manipuris
federally
are federally
educated,
educated,
but they have
but
a
they
very
have a
high
very high
acceptance of
acceptance of
both gender
both
queer
gender,
and
queer, and
sexuality
sexuality
this
uh,
thing,
this
living.
thing living.
And
And
they
then
even
they
appear
even
as
appear
being
as
queer and
queer and queer and
transgender.
transgender.
And then
Then
among some of the
among some
Naga
of the
tribes,
Naga tribes, the
Most
Nagas are the
restricted.
most restricted.
That to the
That to the
Baptist
Baptist
Christianity,
Christianity, which is
one of the more
one of the
extreme
more
forms.
extreme forms of this.
Uh,
Uh,
but
but they have
some of the
some
Naga
of the
tribes at
Naga
least,
tribes at least
they have more,
they have more
it may not be
may
open
not be open
acceptance, but a kind
acceptance,
of
but a
quiet,
kind of quiet and
unspoken
unspoken
acceptance of
acceptance of
this thing,
this
same
thing,
sex love.
same sex love.
I
Much
think
more than the
Much more than
it's
the
much beyond what we discussed as homosexuality and transgender. I think sexual bias would also include, it would also look at how even the heterosexual people mate or their behavior. I've heard of this Maria Gondu tribe. Gondu tribes are the biggest tribe and they have further denominations within, right? It is said that after the age of 14 or 15, there is a space given in the middle of the village for the boy and the
Go
girl
to
to
where
Where
teenagers,
teenagers,
they
they
can
can
experiment
experiment
and
and
find out
find out
find
their
out
their
compatibility.
compatibility.
compatibility. So even such sexuality wouldn't just come down to transgender or oh oh oh. Sexual bias is much more of an umbrella term. Now the last person, no, the next person is Gail Rubin. Gayle, Gail Rubin. RUB, RUBIN. Name of her book is Thinking Sex. Thinking Sex. She breaks feminism and she says that feminism has this belief that it is somehow through gender you attain sexuality. Your sexuality is based on your gender. What I want to, who I want to mate with, the kind of personality I want to become or project, showcase, display, it is based on gender. We all have this problem. We also sometimes, jump into conclusion of she is a trans woman. This is how she wants to behave. So Gail Rubin says that there is no connection. Your gender and your display of your sexuality do not connect it. It is different. Feminism actually goes along, somehow gender and your sexuality are connected. Gail Rubin goes on to say in Thinking Sex that it is not connected. Second point that she says is important. She says the society is so heteronormative that even when we agree to the spectrum of sexualities, some sexuality, all the sexualities are hierarchically arranged in our minds. There will be a hierarchy naturally formed. Gays are okay, lesbians are not okay. Like if you wanna, our mind naturally tries to put in order the spectrum. When spectrum is the horizontal thing, the society suddenly turns it vertical. So the one, so heterosexual is the dominant one, right? It is given more importance. After a lot of talk, transgenders, I think, are now much more accepted in coaching than homosexual people because of the visibility that they have. Now we have put transgender beneath it. Also, in that, due to the visibility of gender and such people, trans women are given more acceptance, where trans men are a little less. When we come to homosexuality, even in homosexuality, maybe gays are a little better. Lesbians are problematic because the problem of progeny is problematic here and there from there. So Gail Rubin's major point is that even when it is a spectrum, there is a tendency to hierarchically organize the sexual classification. What does hierarchy do? Hierarchy says some experiences are valuable. That is why we have put them on top. So if some are valuable, others are less valuable. And the less valuable will be oppressed. And the less valuable will be oppressed. It is a value that we associate in hierarchy that is causing the trouble. So she urges, in a way, to keep the spectrum horizontal than converting it up vertical. It's just what the person wants, what the community wants. Let us not hierarchically arrange it. But a heterosexual, heteronormative society naturally codifies it into value from top most valuable to least valuable. And the least valuable experiences are never given importance and they are oppressed. So this is thinking text way. The last person we are going to do is there's not much to know. Gloria Anzaldua. Gloria Anzaldua. Anzaldua. Zaldua. I think her famous book is Taming the Wild Tongue. Taming Tongue. Taming the Wild Tongue. wherein she goes on to say how, essentially, you can't ever really tame the wild tongue. The wild tongue will stay as the wild tongue. There's no way of taming it. Because taming any tongue is problematic. She brings in the proper post-structuralist view of what we call as, what was that phrase? Buxton's carnivalist, Lord every, what is it? Idealist? Polyphony, right? Polyphony or polyphony something else. Multiple tongues. She thinks, multiple tongues, you need everybody making their noise. You can't tame just one wild tongue out of it. That is what Gloria Anzaldo does, and she is a proponent of Chicana feminism. That's how she is important to cure studies. Chicana stands for CHICANA. Stands for women usually who lived between the borders of Mexico and Texas. Women of mixed race, wherein they would rather like to identify with their Mexican roots than the American roots. And she talks about how sexuality is seen problematic because of the US influence. The US Christian influence problematizes the Chicana tradition, wherein it was okay, gender was fluid. But when you become, byproduct of two races, and the dominant culture brings the racial or sexual bias. And she talks about how, Chicana feminism has to be a discussion, and therefore it develops later into Chicana cure studies. So she is a path breaker in that particular. So this is, I think, summary of your studies, how it's running right now. These are the five important people. We have discussed four or five books. We have to remember Derrida. We have to remember Renaissance. We have to remember Foucault. Foucault is the base of it. So biopower, we could also connect this idea with biopower, how sexuality and power, അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് തോന്നുന്നു the transgender people, trans women especially, they've understood having power is a way to express themselves more freely. So they take on this woman's garb, and they can express femininity more powerfully than the women themselves. And I think that is a very good exercise of Foucauldian concepts. The women are made to feel shame or guilt when they express themselves through their body. The funny discussions of honey, roses, buttocks, or boobs that will not happen with the same thing when they do it in a transgender woman. They have built a wonderful narrative about how they are going to use their body as a weapon, and they have through their narratives gotten our attention. They've made it very clear they're not going to stop. So that way, I think Foucault reigns supreme again in your studies. The other five writers, whereas Between Men is a book I think, we can read a lot of, because it is talking about Tennyson's Princess, Shakespeare's sonnets, Marlowe's, Edward the Third, all of them, and Homo Erotica, discussions on that. So I think that will be a wonderful book that we could all, have.
Last year, one of the most trending audios on Twitter and Reels was someone taking the statement that heterosexual heterosexual love is homoerotic in nature. I think that audio had literally made a meme over it. And describing how man, like a heterosexual man, like as a heterosexual man wants to be with a woman, but everything he associates with being lesbian or he only talks about the man. He never talks about the woman.
But that is a technique of the patriarchy, because they are redirecting the discussion again to the heterosexual. We are here to discuss about completely different from. But the heterosexual will man will again bring it back to himself. He'll keep on trying to be the center. You know, it's like how at the end of the day, even when men are talking about feminism, it is the men who are talking about it. They will not let women talk about feminism. They have this tendency of bringing things back to them. There was this discussion about, homosexuality and its acceptance in Turkey and all, when it was a Christian nation. Now that it is slowly becoming a Muslim nation, the Christians are presenting it as homosexuals have no place. But it is otherwise. Actually, Islam is more accepting of homosexuality than Christianity is. But look at the narrative that is coming out of Turkey. They're saying that since it is becoming a Muslim nation, homosexuals are, they are trying to persecute. The narratives around it and the country and the politics itself is, you know,
No, but
No,
again
but
you
again,
see,
you see,
here
here
again
again,
the
there is
difference
a
becomes
difference
very
becoming
emphatic.
very emphatic.
In the
In the
Quran, there is
Quran, there is
definitely greater
definitely greater
acceptance of
acceptance of
same-sex love
same-sex love
than in the
than
Old
in the
Testament.
Old Testament.
There's no doubt
There's
about
no
that.
doubt about that.
But then,
But
if you
then,
look at
if
the
you look at
laws
the
of
laws of
Islamic
Islamic
countries,
countries,
the laws of
the laws
Christian
of
countries,
Christian
the thing
countries,
is,
the thing is,
Christian countries
Christian
are not
countries are
remained
not remained Muslim.
almost all of
Almost
them
all
have
of them
become
being
Muslim. They
Muslim
become
and they become
secularized.
secularized.
Even a country
Even a
like
country
England,
like
which is
England, which is
officially
officially
the Church of
the
England
Church of
country,
England country,
the laws
the
are very
laws
much
are very much
secularized.
secularized.
Uh,
Uh,
but then
but then
Islamic countries,
Islamic
the
countries,
laws
the
are,
laws are,
even harder
even
than the
harder than
Quran.
the Quran.
And
And
all of them
all
have
of
got
them
very
have got very
severe
severe
punishments
punishments for
for gay sex.
gay sex.
Some of them
Some
even
of
have
them even
Saudi
have
Arabia
Saudi
and Iran
Arabia
has
and
even
Iran
got
have even
10.
got 10.
Uganda has
Uganda
got
has
10
got 10
years.
years.
If somebody
If
is
somebody
caught
is
in
caught in
homosexuality
homosexuality
for the first
for the
time,
first
10
time,
years.
10 years.
And if
And
that
if
person is
that
caught
person is caught
again,
again, it's
described as
described as
activated
activated
homosexuality,
homosexuality.
whatever that
Whatever
means,
that
and
means,
another
and
20
another
years
20
or something
years or
like that.
something like that.
And that was a
And that was a
recent law.
recent law.
It did not
It did
exist
not
when
exist when
Uganda came
Uganda
into
came into
existence as a
existence as
modern
a
country.
modern country.
But
But
it's been
it's
brought
been
now,
brought
and
now,
that
and
has
that
been,
has been,
like,
like so.
if you look at the
If you look at
laws
the
of
laws of
Islamic countries,
Islamic countries,
they are a
they
lot
are a
worse
lot
because
worse
Islamic
because
countries
Islamic
haven't
countries
been
haven't been
secularized.
secularized.
I think this again, I think it has to do with Islam being a new religion.
Whereas the
Whereas the
text of
text
Christianity,
of
the text,
text,
The Quran
the Quran
definitely
definitely
condemns
condemns
pedophilia,
pedophilia.
and the
And the
Quran
Quran
condemns
condemns
sex or any
sex or
kind of
any kind of
sexual
sexual
display in
display
public
in
places.
public
Like
places.
it's very
It's
clear
very
that
clear that
it
it
celebrates sexual
celebrates sexual
conduct,
conduct.
and it
And
even
it even
says that it's a
says that
duty
it's a
of the
duty
man
of
to
the man to
ensure that he
ensure that he
practices
practices
sexuality. But then
sexuality. But then
it says that
it says that
it is
it
something
is
private.
something
It's
private.
not to
It's not
be
to be
in, in front
in
of
the
other
front
public.
of
people,
other
right?
people. Right?
Whereas the Old
Whereas the Old
Testament is much
Testament is
more
much more
severe, right?
severe,
Lower than
lower than
Sodom and
Sodom and
Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah. But then,
but then
due to
due
the
to the
when you look at the
political
political
historical
trajectory and the
trajectory and
laws,
the laws,
the
the
Islamic countries
Islamic
are very
countries are
different.
very
But yet again, Christianity in its, let's say, 13th year was the same. Islam again in its 13th year, I think in a lot of
Yeah,
time
13th
later,
different
century.
century.
7th century is when you have Islam as a proper religion. Now we are in the 21st century. So I think Christianity began in the, by, Anno Domini,
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
Christianity.
Christianity
13th
changed, but
century was dark ages for Christianity.
No, the change
no, the
in
change in
Christian nations came
nations
after
came
World
after
War
World
II.
War II.
Even in
Even in
1950,
1950,
who
who was
helped
one who
the
helped the
British win the
British
war
win
in
the
the
war in
18th
the
century.
18th
He
century.
was demonized, right?
Yeah,
Because of
Yeah,
his
he was criticized,
because he was
criticized
told
because he was
either you
told
go to
either you go
prison
to prison
or you get
or you get
psychiatric treatment.
psychiatric treatment.
And he
And
knew
he
that
knew that his
his gay
his gay
behavior was
behavior
there,
was
but
there. It was not
behavior. He was deep inside. It was not a disease. It was not a medical condition or anything. He was a scientist. He don't know what was happening in us. So that was an unjust choice. And he didn't want to go to prison, and nor did he want to take medicines and treatment for the wrong system. And he committed suicide. And then it was beginning of the 60s that they repealed that law. And in honor of Alan Turing, they called it the Alan Turing Law. And the Queen issued a kind of apology to all and
Okay, yesterday, could you also check in the internet about don't say gay or trans law in America? In 2022, don't say gay or trans because it prohibits anybody from uh, using the word gay or trans till third grade to students in schools. Don't say gay bill. Don't
I
say gay bill. It is a federal bill.
I think it was issued by Ron DeSantis in Florida.
Exactly, Florida law. So it says the bill is called as not
Don't say
till the
gay.
age of Don't tell a child of under age 10. Don't introduce the child to the word gay or trans. Don't discuss it at all. It's happened in 2022. So they are this is again a conservative decision.
I I think at the same time they also passed this law to stop teaching the critical race theory in schools and colleges.
Exactly. The critical base is connected. So I was just going through it yesterday. And this all could be, again, since Anand said that there has to be some research perspectives, this all could be research material where we can actually lend good surveys, do good surveys and lend more knowledge into this theory stream. We could take it up you could actually read the bill. Don't say gay bill, and you could actually point out certain aspects of it which are anti-human in nature. I think, or what are the bases that they have used for this bill? All could be studied for research. Soon with research areas. And I think we'll finish with intersectional, studies. Pure studies what it made possible was intersectionalism. Because feminism always spoke about how women are in a vulnerable position, right? Wherein, when pure studies came, through it came intersectional feminism, which said, see, if you're following feminism, you can't always look at the other man's or the so-called non-female's experience as okay and the female's experience as bad. So I think this pure studies is what intersectional feminism also gained its importance. So every person's experience becomes important. It is not identity politics, but the individual experience gets value. Whether you man or woman or transgender or bisexual, suddenly you have value, and that is what is intersectionalism, and it was brought through the development of LGBTQ studies and pure studies. I think that's the Q&A. Yeah, Q&A. My gosh, I didn't know the questions. Q&A. If anybody has any questions,
if they're still there.
and if you're still there, I had to
The
sorry.
way he's talking, like, oh, after lunch, it's not, it's like when you started the talking kids being here, but it's very,
My fear was that I was telling Anand, I'm used to this conventional way of teaching.
If somebody tells me it's a session, I'm already picturing myself as a teacher sitting away. That's what I kept. I like the distance. But in calls, when we're discussing something more casual, I get to the middle. But the minute you tell me session, my mind gets a block and I have to sit separately, have notes. And then, but what you did was you three eased me into a discussion, which I find beneficial as well. Any questions, or else we would like to go have some biryani? Anand is buying me a biryani. If not, can we wind up? I guess. Thank you.
Any messages on the chat? No. All right. So, guys, thank you so much for being here with us today. And this somewhat concludes our day one. And we'll meet again next Sunday. As I've told you, even though you have joined from far off places and you have your own limitations and stuff to do, if you're free enough, feel free to come to Vytila and join us offline because there are quite a lot of things happening when you come offline. So sometimes you may not be able to be as active as we are here because of the limitations of the digital space. So I once again welcome you, irrespective of whether you have opted for online or offline. You can come any Sunday provided we are here offline. So, most welcome. Thank you for being here today. I hope you enjoyed all our sessions today. Next week, I'll let you know because we have a few online speakers as well. So, I was telling them as well. So, based on who is available and when and where, we'll plan the sessions and let you know in advance. I'll be also sharing a few key terms with you. And I'll come back at some point, if not next week, maybe the week after. I'll come back and have a discussion with you regarding the same. So, thank you so much for being here, for being so patient from morning to this far, and for the probing questions that you had. I hope you had a good day. Thank you. We'll have some follow up 10 to 15 minutes having more fun. So miss that. And thank you so much for joining us. Good day.